Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology turned podcast. Everyone, welcome into the program. We hope that you've enjoyed your holiday break. We know that we have, and ladies and gentlemen, it was especially long for Computer America, even by our standards. Normally we take, of course, the week off before, or between the two, and we usually have about a 2-week break. But this one lasted a little bit longer because, as we said before, on our last program here on the show, I got married. So wait, actually, I got something I was married. So everyone, thank you for that. Oh, you're too kind. But yeah, everything went well, everyone. I'm pleased to announce that she said yes. No one saw it coming. Gasp in the audience all around. It was great. So, please calm down. So with that being said, everyone, I'm happy to be back, and of course, Computer America in general is happy to be back because CES just happened. And I gotta say, wow, this event was definitely a CES that is still recovering from the pandemic. The pandemic closed it down completely, and now last year there was a physical presence, and this year there was more of a physical presence, but it was still a show that was not completely back on its feet. But there is signs of life, and there were a lot of things announced, and while it may not have been the best CES, there was some very interesting there were some very interesting products and showcases and technology, and I can't be more happy to have Ralph Bond himself here on the program to talk about a number of the different products shown. So today's going to be kind of our CES wrap up, and of course we also did one with Pop Zara just a day or so ago that will show up on the website here today as well. Of course, you can find it over on their site as well. And with that being said, why don't we just go ahead, bring in Ralph, have fun, and it'll be a nice show. We'll see how far we can get into the show notes. The show notes are exceptionally long. Ralph's done a lot of work, and ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a fun segment. So he is, of course, our science and technology trends correspondent, and that can entail anything from medical science, travel, aviation, construction, biology, whatever, even, anything and everything really seems to fall under this category lately. And of course, CES, the Consumer Electronics Show that happens out every year in Las Vegas, of course, falls under Ralph's purview as well. So welcome onto the program once again, Ralph Bond. Ralph, how you doing?
Great to be back. And today, as you just indicated, what we're going to try to do, folks, we'll see how far we get, is cover 10 remarkable products featured at the gigantic Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. And again, come out to the website, come out to computeramerica.com, get those show notes. They're going to have links and pictures and everything for all 10 of the items from CES we're going to talk about. But to kind of highlight a little bit more about what Ben was just saying a moment ago, before the pandemic, the annual Consumer Electronics Show hit a peak at one point of 180,000 attendees. Now, last week's show drew 100,000 attendees and included 2,500 vendors from 166 different countries who showcased, of course, an amazing array of gadgets and technology. So it's just great to have a chance to cherry pick and look through some of these stories that I monitored and hand-selected 10 stories, and we're going to try to see as many as we can cover.
Yeah, and for Computer America, I know that our presence out at CES, we always broadcasted live from there, from showstoppers, and we always, kind of were walking the floor and meeting vendors. And it's always fun seeing, of course, what Ford and what, a lot of these other big, car companies and other just large companies, they're going to get the press. Intel's going to get the press, Microsoft's going to get the press, Samsung's going to get the press. But what's fun, Ralph, is always going, kind of booth to booth in the Brands Expo and some of the other halls at the Las Vegas Convention Center, and finding the companies that you may not have really heard of. And I think you did a pretty good job of finding those that I think everyone knows what Mercedes-Benz is going to do. But to hear about some of these other stories, later in the show notes, it's those are really something that weren't covered by a lot of mainstream. So But you have a good mix. I'm not saying that you don't have the big keynotes as well, but you have a good mix. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to highlight for Ralph, because he normally says this, but I'm going to say it. Check out the show notes. It's going to have links. It's going to have more information. Ralph just, of course, finds the key information, presents it to you, and if you want to find out more after he's kind of teased you, you can go to the link and find more information. And as for the show notes today, like we said, they're exceptionally long. So if we don't get to it all, we'll let you know at the end of the show, and you can go and, of course, do some homework, find some extra fun goodies in there that we'll have up on our website after the show. So, Ralph, since I took your thunder, why don't we go ahead and just get started with story number one?
Yes, that's great. So this is in the category of a big name company, but like you just said, we're going to have a fun mix of obscure and lesser known companies mixed in with the biggies. So the biggies, first off here, BMW, gigantic car maker, of course, demonstrated a color changing concept car at CES last week. And I got this from The Verge, and it was widely covered elsewhere too. So, folks, bottom line here is you have to see pictures and videos of this new car technology to believe it's real. It's that wild. A year ago, though, you may remember, in fact, I think Ben and I talked about this a year ago at the Consumer Electronics Show. BMW demonstrated a concept car called the iX Flow that they promoted as the world's first color-changing car. But at that time, its technology could only shift between white, black, and gray, but it was still pretty cool. Right. For this year's show, BMW displayed a prototype all-electric car called the iVision D that features a new full-color version of last year's e-ink. I can only presume that means electronic ink technology that can on-demand change into 32 colors. The concept car's body surface, including its wheel covers, this is a freaky thing, you got to see it, is made up of 240 advanced e-paper film segments from a company called e-ink. And in the show notes, I have a link to e-ink. That's a fascinating company. Great website. Check it out. So each of the 240 segments on the body of the car, including the wheel covers, can be controlled individually. And so you can have the entire exterior of the car be one color, red or gray or whatever you want, or display a wild and amazing patchwork of multicolor segments. So, Ben, we could have some fun with this. My personal take on this, it's really fun. It's very geeky. It's interesting, but a potential traffic distraction. I mean, if you look at the picture that's in the show notes of a multicolor version, it would be a head turner on the freeway, and you might cause a crash. Or a nightmare for law enforcement. Okay, so here you go, Hollywood. You could commit a crime, jump into your color-changing car, and as you speed away, change your color, making identification challenging. So, well, we'll see how popular this is.
I think that a lot of people liken it to the game Grand Theft Auto, because whenever you commit a crime, you can go to a body shop and change the color of the car, and of course, get the cops off your tail. That was, and to your point, that was a lot of people kind of made the same comparison to last year's, because of course going from white to gray to black, the car could completely change. We've never seen one of these things in motion, Ralph. So obviously the demo videos and stuff like that, but to see it in person, we've only seen it on the showroom floor at CES. Right. And it's always a great application of e-ink, which I think a lot of people might associate with Kindles. Same technology, just kind of wallpapered over this car. And it's really fun to see, and to see all the different patterns and colors really highlights kind of the paneled nature of this technology. By no means is this ready for consumer. This is not your next paint job, but it is a cool proof of concept for sure.
Yes.
and of course the some of the designs that they really go for. I was trying to find and I think it's called the Bespoke line of refrigerators from Samsung. Samsung has refrigerators that are really reminiscent of like the 70s or even the 50s with some of the color schemes. I'm trying to find it on their website here, and the best I can find is like this little product demo. You can kind of see it's kind of those big solid colors, kind of retro look, and that's really what spoke to me about the BMW colors was, Ralph. I think retro's coming back in.
And in fact, Ben, you're right. Mm-hmm. You're right on target because Samsung cooking appliance is coming up right next. Story 2.
yeah. Well, the next story is not about color, but about what you can't see. It's, ladies and gentlemen, this goes for everything. It's not about the outside that you should pay attention to. It's what's on the inside.
Yes,
I guess. I don't know. But anyways, artificial intelligence. Your oven's smarter than it looks, I guess. So let's talk about how an oven might use artificial intelligence, because when I try to use my oven with my intelligence, it falls short sometimes. So I'm hoping that, for a lot of us, cooking is a challenge. Maybe our oven can really help us with that. So Ralph, story number 2.
Yeah, so story number 2, the headline here is Samsung at the CES show last week shows off an oven run by artificial intelligence. And I got this from CNET and other outlets as well. So, Ben, of course, we all know that opening the oven door to inspect, or for example, a pie or a casserole, allows a lot of heat to escape, wasting lots of energy. And then Samsung's new, and you mentioned this word, bespoke, which I had to look that word up. I said, what? That sounds like a weird word. What is that? Is that like a spoke of a wheel or something? I don't get it.
A bespoke of a wheel. I like that.
Yeah, so it's like personalized. So Samsung's new bespoke artificial intelligence wall oven offers technology to avoid this and much more. And the oven features an artificial intelligence pro cooking algorithm which can recognize up to 80 dishes and recommend the appropriate temperature, time, and mode for cooking. And to reduce opening the door, the oven has a built-in camera and includes a smartphone app. So the oven can send live video and notifications to your phone to track cooking progress or alert you, for example, if the food is burning.
That's
cool. And the Samsung Bespoke artificial oven is available in Europe now and will launch in North America in the third quarter of this year. And based on the current price in euros in Europe, it'll cost about $3,000 US. But I'll tell you what, it would make my life easier because a lot of times, I'll tell you what, I'll show you. See this little timer?
Yeah.
My wife will come in and say, Ralph, I'm going to take a shower. You need to, in 10 minutes, go down and check that thing in the oven and so forth. And I set the timer and have to run downstairs and all that sort of stuff. I would love this oven because I could just get a notification on my smartphone.
Yeah, I think the iteration of technology before this was internet connected ovens, so that you could change, you could set schedules and change the oven temperature from your phone. But to have the oven do it itself, and on timers and things like that could make a lot of frustrating dishes much easier to cook. And Ralph, I even heard this technology was coming from in conjunction with like grocery stores, as well as appliance makers, where you could one day go in, buy a meal package, scan it, and then your digital assistant will say, don't forget you're making chicken today, and it will remind you to start cooking it. It will set the oven to the correct temperature. It will give you a little how-to video on how to make it. There's a future where you go in, you buy a meal, and all of your appliances know what you're going to make and help you make it. Samsung's getting there. So very, very cool technology. And as always, AI is kind of this catch-all, but this sounds like a very practical application. So
it's interesting. Too bad it's $3,000, but other than that, hey, it's cool.
Yeah, it usually is. But hey, that's what you're going to see at CES, and that's what I think you're highlighting here, is that sometimes what you see at CES, you will only see at CES. It's it's hoping to make that impact. If there's enough of a demand for it, they might bring it to market. But in a lot of cases, Ralph, as you know, some of these products never make it off the showroom floor.
That's right.
They're only there to demonstrate technology for other vendors. So there you go. Story number 2. Story number 3. This one, and John Deere usually does bring their technology to market, and by market, it's usually a big dirty field. So let's talk about John Deere, who this always surprises people, is actually a huge mainstay at CES because, we always talk about construction being, very technology oriented. Construction and farming and everything else that John Deere does is very technology oriented. So let's talk about number 3.
Yeah. So the headline here is John Deere unveils an all-electric excavator at the Consumer Electronics Show. And I got this from 4constructionpros.com and Bloomberg News. So for me, it was a truly unexpected surprise that at last week's Consumer Electronics Show, John Deere's all-new electric excavator was shown. And for me, my first blush response to that was hardly the kind of thing I'd associate with consumer electronics, but of course, a real turn on for construction geeks like my son-in-law, who's in the industry. And the John Deere team said the goal behind the development of the electric excavator is to reduce operating costs and noise while producing zero emissions. And the company said the electric version won't sacrifice any power or performance, but did not give details about availability, pricing, or how often the machine will need to be recharged or how long it will take to recharge. This fits in well with what you were just saying a moment ago, Ben. Sometimes at Consumer Electronics Show, what these companies are doing is sort of showing you, kind of pulling back the curtain and saying, hey, look what we're working on. Mm-hmm. It's not ready for delivery yet, but check it out. We're on our way, just to make a statement to the industry. So this is a good example of that. And kind of fun. And again, for me, I didn't realize that John Deere had been exhibiting at the Consumer Electronics Show. It's been many years since I've been to a show myself. So this was fun for me. Big surprise.
The last time I went to CES, John Deere was there, of course, and they had a giant combine that they set up on the showroom floor. It was the biggest piece of equipment in the entire show, and Ralph. It was kind of funny seeing all these tech reporters, from New York and Los Angeles and Austin, that who probably have never been in a farm field before in their life. John Deere was there, and they had a little ladder up, and they're like, "Get your picture taken in this combine."
Yes,
and the tech people loved it. They were like, "Look, I'm a farmer," but no, it was really high tech, and John Deere always does this. I am very curious. Obviously, they wouldn't have had this thing running in the building with everyone, but I am curious about the noise part because construction equipment, man, when they're doing construction down your street, you know about it. I am curious how loud this thing can be.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be a big advancement in that field. And it's interesting. And they're not, by the way, truth in lending statement here, they are not the only ones that have heavy construction equipment, all electric. There are other competitors out there. It's just interesting that John Deere, this incredible name in the industry, is jumping into this area. So I thought that was extra interesting.
Really shows where, and to a lot of our segments here with Ralph, I will say that a big theme that we talked about on the other show, a big theme of CES this year was sustainability. Every large company had something to say about how they're making everything greener, more sustainable, recycling, end of life. They're having answers for those questions now, which is always great to see. So
you got it.
Story number 3, story number 4, let's talk about Razer, because of all the companies that were there, I would say that Razer, who makes your computer peripherals, they came out with the most products, and a lot of them are weird because, Ralph, if you remember last year, they had the RGB face mask, the air filter face mask, very futuristic design, but Razer always innovates, and this year was no different. So what's story number 4?
Yeah, I love this one. A new head cushion allows computer gamers to feel the game and also has audio capabilities. Pick this story up from Mashable.com. And at last week's show, Razer, as you mentioned before, a popular computer gaming peripheral brand, showed a really innovative head cushion with the bizarre name of Project Carol. There's got to be a story. I couldn't find out why they called this thing Project Carol. But anyway, this headrest can be attached to the top of sophisticated chairs designed for PC PC gamers, and that's what's shown in the picture on the show notes. And the top part there is the Razer add-on, as you can see. So the head cushion outputs advanced rear audio as well as haptic feedback that responds to the action in whatever game you're playing. That I would love to experience and see what that's like. And just a reminder, haptic feedback, that refers to technology that creates a sense of touch through vibration or other means. And the high-tech head cushion emulates 7.1 surround sound. And so my first thought immediately when I read that was, most of the gamers I know will wear headsets, right? Yeah. And sometimes have the microphone and all that kind of goods because they're interacting with colleagues in a real game situation. Mm-hmm. But I presume that this means to say you could take those headphones off. So, and again, it emulates the 7.1 surround sound, and the haptics are powered by Razer's HyperSense technology. Razer claims the head cushion will fit any gaming chair and connects wirelessly to a PC with a 2.4 gigahertz low latency technology. And Razer, however, and this fits well in the idea of showing prototypes, kind of giving a tease. Mm-hmm. They did not disclose any price or availability details at this point in time, but wanted to share with the industry this latest innovation. So kind of cool stuff.
So my only concern with a product like this, and why I don't think it will, really make it, is that, Ralph, I don't know about you, but for a lot of people who play video games, and to kind of turn my chair sideways for everyone watching the video, I'm usually sitting with probably about 3 or 4 inches from my headrest. Like, it's very rare do I find myself, completely sitting back and trying to play video games like that. Right. I don't normally have my head resting against the back of my chair. Right. So I'm very curious how many people actually are, because your head would need to be in touching this pillow. Maybe that's just me, but I think ergonomically it's not the it's not the most ideal place to put it. Now, if you could put it in, as like a lumbar support, and you could put it kind of lower in the chair and have it vibrate your lower back, something like that might make a little bit more sense to me. But, hey, again, CES, you're going to see things that might never make it, but are still kind of cool. So there you go, Razer. And ladies and gentlemen, Razer had a lot of products. If you want to check out more, check out CES 2023 Razer. They had a lot of fun products. So with, one of them off the top of my head was a sound bar that you put underneath, and it can actually track your head, Ralph. If you're moving left and right, or you're kind of, sitting in a different position, it will track your head and actually send the sound directly at you. So it was very, very cool. So that's Razer. So that's story number 4. Let's go ahead and do story number 5. And hey, it wouldn't be CES without Intel.
Yes, or Microsoft, or whatever. Yeah, or Apple. So this one is this got a lot of coverage. So maybe many of our viewers and listeners are familiar with this already. But Intel at CES debuted the world's fastest processor for laptops. And by the way, jumping ahead, just yesterday, they also announced the desktop version of this processor as well. I got this from Yahoo Finance and many other sources too. So at the Consumer Electronics Show, Intel showed off its 13th generation Intel Core microprocessor, which sets a new industry speed record for laptops thanks to its 24 cores, which is a first for a laptop processor. So more about what a core is in a moment. The new Core i9 processor includes 8 performance cores for heavy-duty tasks like gaming and 14 efficiency cores for routine activities like web browsing or word processing, that kind of stuff. So, Ben, of course, you're familiar with this. Many of our viewers and listeners probably are as well. But just to make sure everybody's on the same page, what the heck is a core? When you hear about this all the time, right? They even Intel calls their processors core this or that.
What are these things?
Well, yeah. So a core, super simple. A core is a central processing unit, sometimes called affectionately the brain of a microprocessor. It receives instructions and performs calculations or operations to implement those instructions. And here's more on cores from Tom's Hardware. A core can work on one task while another core works on a different task, So the more cores a CPU has, the more efficient it is. And so it's quite simple in a way. It's sort of like the bit about shrinking transistors and getting more transistors onto silicon enabled Intel and others to start having multiple brains on a single so-called microprocessor. So it's really cool. And a little history here, Intel's first processor with 2 cores or brains was the Pentium D, as in Delta, launched in 2005. So here we are 18 years later. This achievement by Intel for me is so exciting, as it means that your next laptop could have 24 brains to divide and conquer a host of tasks at blinding speeds. And yesterday, as we mentioned before, they announced a desktop version. And I'm going to take a quick personal aside.
Sure.
I was with Intel for almost 14 years, as you know, Ben. Part of my time there was supporting the Intel Architecture Labs with media outreach to the technology press and so forth. And I remember way back when, before we had the Pentium D, we were working with something called hyperthreading. And what hyperthreading did was took a single core microprocessor, but virtually made it multiple processors, virtually, not physically. So the Pentium D in 2005 was a big deal because it took the idea of hyperthreading, but made it physically real, if I'm making myself clear. Study the history of hyperthreading. That's very, very interesting. And it's the forerunner to the idea of, now we can have real multiple brains in a single microprocessor chip. So cool stuff.
And for a lot of people out there, when you're looking up and researching CPUs, you're actually going to see it's almost every single every single processor, you also get how many threads are included, and that is hyperthreading, like Ralph was talking about.
Right.
So, for instance, the one that they just announced yesterday, the i9-13900KS, 24 cores, so just like this one, but it has 32 threads. So in that case, they take their 8 performance cores and turn them in and use hyperthreading and turn those into 8 additional threads as well.
It's fantastic.
Of course, and to touch a little bit more on for people who might be still a little bit lost, 24 cores, a program might take up 2 cores, might take up 4 cores. If you are a photo editor or a movie maker, some of those programs can take all available threads. A single program can take 32. But of course, hey, if you're using 32 cores, it means that your thing might render, or your program might get done 32 times faster than if it was just on a single core. So real world applications, and it's always great to see that Intel is going the way of that, because for a while there they didn't really care about going too high with cores. But this, and Ralph, I think it's also fair to say that they finally hit a consumer model that is rated to go up to 6 gigahertz. 5 gigahertz for a while there was, really the threshold. It took a number of years to get past it, but we're already at 6 with Intel. It's very, very impressive. So awesome stuff to see. So that's story number 5. And story number 6, let's go ahead and talk about another feature that might need some explanation, because you may not be familiar exactly with what HDR is, but Ralph's going to get into that, and of course with what Samsung is doing.
Yeah. So again, another big name like Intel, Samsung introduced a new lineup of TVs at the Consumer Electronics Show with artificial intelligence powered auto HDR mode. And believe me, I had to look this up too, and we'll get into in a second here. Got this story from TechCrunch.com. And so the company's latest Neo QLEDs offer auto HDR remastering, which Samsung says uses AI deep learning technology to analyze and apply real-time high dynamic range. That's what HDR stands for. So to apply real-time high dynamic range effects on standard dynamic range content. Hold on to that. On a scene-by-scene basis. That one paragraph just is a stunning technology. Let's read that again. Uses AI deep learning technology to analyze and apply in real time high dynamic range effects on standard dynamic range content on a scene by scene basis. Talk about processing challenge. Wow. So HDR increases the increases the contrast between the brightest whites and the darkest blacks a display can produce. And the system compares non-HDR content with HDR material and uses machine learning to analyze the differences and then make the conversion. Now, I added this to the show notes. Ben, I can send you an updated one if you wanted. I just grabbed some notes from an outfit called historycomputer.com. So HDR lets you see details in dark shadows and highlights in one scene. With standard dynamic range, SDR, either one is usually blown out or crushed, so you cannot see the detail in them. And for a while, HDR was primarily primarily used in photography, digital photography. Non-HDR, so-called standard dynamic range, or SDR, is probably what you're used to watching your content with in general terms. So what we're saying is HDR is vastly better in terms of the contrast issues. And Samsung have figured out how to create a computer-based machine. I'm sure, of course, it's got a lot of processing going on in here to scene by scene in real time, take that standard content that you're used to seeing and jack it up with an HDR. It's like converting it on the fly. It just like, boing, blows my mind, scene by scene.
It really is a cool technology, and I'm glad that they mentioned photography, because I was going to say, if people really want to experience this firsthand, try on their phones. On most smartphones, you can actually turn on or off the HDR feature. So try taking a picture without HDR, take it with, and you'll see, as Ralph was saying, the darks are darker, the whites are whiter, and both can happen in the same photo. So HDR really, and as far as display technology, Ralph, I would say that for anyone out there, HDR is better for viewing quality than going from 4K to 8K. Not saying that 8K is a bad thing, but in terms of what looks better, HDR is, maybe something to keep an eye on more than, just a higher resolution. It's going to make everything look a lot better. So
interesting.
Very, very cool that they're able to do it on the fly and with it itself, because Ralph, no matter how much you want it, a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows, they're made, they're produced. It is what it is. The film has already been set and it's already been digitized. It will never be HDR, or at least shot in HDR. But with this technology, now you can see it in HDR, and I think that's really, really cool. So there you go. So story number 6, and then we're gonna do number 7, and then we're gonna see which ones we want to cover. But we're gonna do 7, and then one more story, and then there will be I would say leftovers, but more stories. Not to say that what's left is bad, but there will be more stories in the show notes as well.
Yes. So number 7 here. This was really cute, and this I could relate to as a grandparent with little guys. They've outgrown the stroller stage, but nonetheless, this really resonated with me. So here's the story: self-driving stroller. Okay. By the way, the website for this is GLUXKIND.com. So check this out. I got this story from TechCrunch, and this is really cool stuff. The Ella, ELLA smart stroller by Canadian startup Gluckskind is a hands-free motorized buggy that uses artificial intelligence to detect obstacles and danger on the pavement. It was a CES 2023 Innovation Awards winner. This is very cool. The name Gluckskind is inspired by the German word Glückskind, or Glux means lucky and kind means child. So lucky child, right? So it's packed with sensors, including cameras. The Ella stroller can drive itself when empty. Okay, stress when empty. They're not saying you put your little baby in there and just let this thing go off and good luck to you. No. It's when it's empty, because the idea is to keep up with parents while they hold their infants and stop automatically if it encounters an obstacle. So again, as a grandparent, I was reminded of these kinds of things. The kids squawking and crying as over, you have to pick them up and you're still pushing the stroller. Well, wouldn't it be great if the stroller could take care of itself while you're wrestling with the baby? So anyway, the buggy's cameras track moving and stationary objects as people and bikes, alerting parents to potential collision dangers through sounds and flashing lights in the handle. This thing's really cool. As for the Ella's motors, they aid when manually pushing the stroller, assisting with inclines, and automatic braking when going downhill or stationary. And the price here, get ready, $3,300, but technology-wise, very clever. And again, I want to stress the idea: it's an autonomous mode only when there's no little guy or gal in the stroller. And
this is where and we've actually had this going to the show, talking to the companies and the developers and recommending things, and we've seen them end up in the finished product. Ralph, if I was there and I was recommending things to this company, I would say that for that price, maybe also develop that this could also be a car seat. If you could make the buggy part of it be a car seat as well, with straps and seat buckles and safety features, maybe that price would be a little bit more tolerable, because that's a lot of money for a baby stroller. But then again, baby stuff is very expensive as it is. So it's still I was, in the other show where we're talking about this, Ralph, this one did come up, and I was like, they're cowards. They won't let the baby be in it by itself. You have to pick the baby up. Like, why not let the baby drive itself around? That's all I wanted, But we're not there yet. We're not there yet. So, yeah. So there's that story, and again, you can find more in the article. We'll see, how far that one makes it. So that's story number 7. Ralph, let's skip down to story number 10, because not only was CES, it's also the new year. This is, hey, this is my first time saying hi to everyone with the new year. I hope that everything is going well. And usually people make New Year's resolutions to do better.
Yes.
One of them, I think a lot of people might be doing, is getting healthier. And one way to get healthier is to drink enough water. Some people set the goal of 100 ounces a day or something like that.
Right.
Well, this app might actually help with this. And I've never heard of an app being able to do this in real time, even with a wearable.
Yes.
So let's talk about story number 10.
Yes, story number 10. So wearable hydration monitor. Again, this comes from CES. Got this from an interesting outlet, tomorrowsworldtoday.com. It's a fun outlet. So there's an outfit called Epicor Biosystems unveiled its new connected hydration sweat patch and mobile app at 2023 CES. Connected hydration, they say, is the first electronic wearable that continuously measures sweat fluid and electrolyte losses while monitoring skin temperature and movement. Wow, okay. To prevent hydration, an alarm goes off on the device when the wearer's fluid loss exceeds 2% of body weight. That's how articulate this thing is. According to Epicor, the device is intended for people who work in harsh conditions, athletes grappling with extreme heat, and people living through severe heat waves. So it's an interesting application. I didn't have any pricing or availability information that I could find readily, so I'm not sure about that. But an interesting concept. Like you said, if you're made the resolution to maybe jog or run or something like this might be a product for you, especially if you live in a climate where you have high heat conditions.
Yeah, and just looking through through their press release here, it doesn't seem that they have any further availability or things like that. But it's still for, and I guess especially for workers, so not for people sitting at their desk in an air conditioned room like I was hoping, but more so for very, very harsh conditions. I could totally imagine this being a something that companies want to make sure their workers are safe and and hydrated. So Ralph, that's a great one to end on. I think we're going to go ahead and end that there. But ladies and gentlemen, there's still story number 8, which I believe story number 8 was the kids friendly shower speaker. So they can listen to music and listen to things in the shower. And then of course there was story number 9 that is the flying car, which ladies and gentlemen, both of those in the show notes, links to everything, including everything that we did. And of course, Ralph Bon Wicks, search that, it'll pop right up. We'll have a link in the show notes. Ralph, thank you so much for joining us once again. And ladies and gentlemen, hope you had a great holiday. We'll be back, a whole new year of Computer America. Everyone, see you next time. Bye-bye.